Hey guys, welcome to my channel. It's emilykitty, and I'm here with some tips for how to get your summer reading done as efficiently as possible. So just as an introduction, granted that this is my first video on my channel, I'm Emily, and I'm going to a private school in the Mid-Atlantic region, and I'm a rising 9th grader, and this year I'm anticipating to take 5 AP classes. And I work very vehemently in school because I think that, progress academically is one of the greatest hallmarks of one's life. So, just for some tips on how to get your summer reading done. Okay, so this perhaps isn't obligatory for every school, but in my school, I had to work very arduously for the summer reading this year, and so all 9th graders were required to read 2 books. Persepolis, which is a graphic novel by Marjane Satrapi, which I thought was going to be a very facile read, granted that it's, a graphic novel, and I don't generally peruse them, but it was very rigorous in terms of its cultural implications. And we also had The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. And so this was also incredibly time-consuming. And so my first tip is in order to actually have a successful experience doing your summer reading, you need to have the right environment. Like, a lot of people think that they can get away with doing summer reading just, in their bedrooms, sort of, lying about. And while that's certainly okay, there are, in any one given room, there are so many distractions which people generally don't recognize. They don't acknowledge, for instance, like for instance, my parents have an Alexa and an Amazon Echo downstairs, and they play music on it incessantly, and so sometimes that can be a little bit of a distraction. Sometimes like if your TV is on, or anything of that sort, anything of that nature, any sort of auditory input, visual input that is extraneous relative to your reading has to get out, because that will just better corroborate your experience. Tip number 2. So you have to be punctual with your summer reading. You have to be on top of it. I started my summer reading personally in May, when we had received the books upon taking our final exams. And so it's better that you do it in May or June than in August, because in August there's some temporal pressure there, and that's going to make you perform not significantly, but at least marginally worse. Especially if you start in the latter half of August. Maybe don't. And so, but then again, there are some disadvantages to doing it as early on as May or June. For instance, presently it's the Ides of August, and I think that I'm probably going to have to review the books in order to just review the major plot points and feel ready to discuss them in class. And so, as long as you're getting them done in a productive fashion and in a way when you know that you're going to have at least, 2 or 3 weeks left before school in order to prepare, then you're perfect. Okay, tip number 3 is that you shouldn't just read it as if it were, just knowing and, preemptively that it is summer reading. Instead, think of it just as another book that you're reading leisurely. Because when you think of it as an assignment, automatically, just on a psychological level, you are going to reject the book. When it's like, oh, I'm obligated to read this, what a bore. But, oh, I am reading this because, derived from my own will, that's more fun to some extent. Even though it's never going to be precisely parallel, exactly the same as choosing a book and then reading it, if you have the right mentality, then that will facilitate the whole process from there on out. Okay, tip number 4 is you don't have to feel confined to just the book. You can use, different platforms for reading it. And so, for instance, sometimes reading is really time consuming, and people have different paces at which they would like to read. It's not even sometimes just how quickly that you can read, because it's not about just finishing the book. It's about actually invigorating yourself in the story. And so you don't have to just read it, or you really don't have to read it at all. And I'm not saying that like don't do your summer reading, but it's perfectly okay if you'd like to subscribe to a service such as Audible. I personally don't, because I find it a little bit better to actually see the words, but sometimes doing that instead of reading it and hearing the story, but you have to concentrate, you know, like you can't just do it while, like, you know, going on Amazon. But you know, like, as long as you do that or in conjunction to the book, then you're okay. It's just a matter of, you know, conveying the information from the page to your mind. And finally, tip number 5. So tip number 5 is that there are sites like Cliff Notes and Spark Notes and Schmoop, whatever, that people generally subscribe to over the course of the school year. And yeah, they're actually very helpful. I've used them in the past, but the thing that people generally, the misconception that people have about the, you know, the real purposes of those sites is that they feel that they're to be used in lieu of reading, but that's not okay. You know, in order to actually realize, you know, to the teacher's expectations, the entirety of one summer reading assignment, it's perfectly okay to use any of those websites, any of that nature of websites, but you know, as long as it's a supplement and not a replacement. You know, like, because then you don't really get a holistic understanding. You often miss out on the language or, you know, any literary devices that are used in the book, and, you know, sometimes the sites provide those too, admittedly, but it doesn't really give you the experience of having read the book, just reading, you know, synopses of each chapter. And so generally I abide by the rule of 3s, and so if I read a passage or a chapter or whatever that it may be more than 3 times and I just do not understand it, then I will either go on to one of these supplemental websites, or I will do further research. Like in Persepolis, it follows a girl, like the author, Marjane, as she was a child in, you know, Iran in the midst of revolution, and I had very little historical background on that era, and so I had to do a lot of research in order to in order to bolster my spirits and bolster my understanding of the book as I read it. And so once I had done that, it made it much easier for me. And so, okay guys, that's it for my top 5 tips for completing your summer reading efficiently. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe. I've had so much fun doing this, and I hope to make more videos over the course of the school year. Granted that I'm going to have quite a bit to do, as I am an ascending freshman. We'll see about how often that I upload, but yes. So thank you so much. Until next time.